Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Are Australians retiring happy? Today I'm joined by Aaron Minney, who is Head of Retirement Income Research at Challenger. Aaron talks about Challenger's inaugural Retirement Happiness Index, revealing the happiness of Australians over 60, and the results might surprise you. We also uncover the secrets to retirement happiness, covering health, social connections and financial planning. From a mental challenge to guaranteed income options like annuities, Aaron shares practical tips and insights to help you navigate your retirement journey with confidence and joy. Well, welcome, Aaron, to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here with you.
The topic today, the Retirement Happiness Index that Challenger's just launched. It's a topic close to my heart, and I'm really just very happy that you've gone and done this work on this area. But simply, are Australians retiring happy?
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is the question we were trying to ask, Mark, when we sort of looked at this research there. And it says by and large they are. They got a score of 70 out of 100. So that's a pretty good score. 70% of people were really happy, but it also says they could probably be a little bit happier, or more people might be. So it's a great score, but something to really build on, I think, and expand.
And it was interesting. I only just read in the paper, although you talk about the paper, it was online on the weekend, and the happiness index, Australia came in 10th in the world, and it has all those Nordic countries in the first few positions, but coming in 10th. But it was very interesting that they were talking about for older Australians. It may be a bit different for younger Australians, but for the older Australians, it's never just about the money. I've been helping and coaching people for a long time. Happiness or retiring happy is never about just the money. So what are some of the other drivers that you found through the research?
That's right. Well, the money's only there because it sort of helps you do stuff. And it's what you actually do that makes a difference. The first two is actually really around your health. Are you able to do the stuff you want to do? So have you got your physical health? Have you got your mental health? Are you in a good state of mind? And that all sets you up in terms of being able to enjoy life. But it's getting into, just doing stuff. What are your hobbies? What are your activities? Are you doing stuff that you think is fun? Is there something that gives you a bit of joy? And it's whether you can do that and whether you've got the right social connections, that you're sort of relating to people. As humans, we are very used to relating to people, and that doesn't change when we retire. Some people actually miss that about the work environment and struggle. So it's much more than the money. It's making sure you've got all these bits together that sort of stack up, and when you sort of combine them and you've got everything working well, that's when you can sit there and sort of really hit that happiness in retirement.
Yeah, and you've raised a few topics there. The first one you raised, and we'll just go into each one of these, delve into a little bit more closely because it's so important. But the first one you said is health, and it's not just physical, it's mental health. And the amount of stories you would have heard, I've heard of people, work their whole life, have their career, get to 60, 65, whatever age they stop, and then something happens. Some health condition happens. They can't, their knees are blown, they can't do that trip around the world or do all the walking they want to do. And it really is so important, if you're going to retire well, to be able to enjoy it by having a good health.
That's right. And it's being able to do those trips or the stuff that you sort of put on the bucket list that allows you to be happy. And I think to add to that, it's really around thinking about how you're planning it out. If the same stories I've heard is what you just said there, where it's someone sort of got to 65 or 60 or whatever and so, well, I'm going to retire now. But it's only when they started planning the week before that they realized that actually they weren't ready for it. And maybe it was health, maybe it was mental state in terms of whether they were coping with the change. And I think that's part of it as well, putting that plan in place and working on it over time.
And also, whether you're on the same page as your partner, is it use your trip around Australia, is it overseas? And you may have very differing ideas of what retirement looks like.
Exactly. And it's important sort of with everything, whether it be the finances or sort of the activities you're going to do. I know, and I'm in my 50s now, and so my wife and I have discussions about sort of what it's going to be and what are we going to do when we're not working, and we're in that zone of, well, okay, maybe it's 10 years off, maybe it's only 5, God help us if it's 20. Uh, but it's like making sure we've got that sort of right. We've got our ideas about travel and sort of places we haven't been that we do want to see while we still can.
And it's important that for some people, and for me, I'm going to work to the day I die. I think that's just it. I'm just happier. I don't want to work as hard, of course, but I definitely want to enjoy work. And I think for a lot of people, retirement, not got not it, for probably the last couple of years, not got a negative connotation, but it's not. If some people enjoy work, that's fine. It's just being financially, being able to being healthy, being able to do that, and still enjoying the things that, whether you want to travel, but you may not want to travel 12 months a year. Retirement's going to look very different to everyone.
It does, and that's where one of the factors we look at is the activities and the hobbies. So, are they fun? And for some people, and I go around and I've talked to people that are well, retired, but they don't really think about themselves as retired. And I know there's a lot of people say, let's stop calling them retired. And I don't know what else to call them. Calling them old seems a bit rough as well. But you find that they're actually in their happy spot because they're doing something someone else might consider work, but they think that it is fun. And so the more you can actually do something that you consider as fun, whether or not you're getting paid or earning an income, that's sort of adding to your own value and sense of self. And that's really important for your mental health and how you're approaching retirement and seeing that there's a bit of a purpose there. And those factors all come through, in looking at that happiness index. And I think, the mental health was actually something that scored really well, almost 80 sort of on the factors there. So I think that's a good sign. Australians have pretty much got in the right place there.
Yeah, and having that challenge, and I just call it putting under that umbrella of challenge. You need something to keep your brain active, and that helps with your mental health and all those things. And it'd be probably worth talking about that, because for some people that challenge is that they want to get their golf down to scratch. They want to they have these hobbies, or for a lot of other people, it's doing a side hustle. There's a speaker I know talking around Australia, and she's just called herself a golden oldie, and all she does is teach people how to build side hustles when they've retired, just to keep their brain active. And if that makes you happy, fantastic. But I just think, that the whole thing about mental challenge, because I know some people say, well, when I retire, I'm just going to relax. I'm going to go bowls. I'm going to just travel. If your brain's not active, I think that's a real problem. We do need to do that. And I think as you said before with you and your partner, that 10 years out, you're starting to actually plan, and it's just not the financial, it's what are we actually going to do. And I think what that mental challenge is a big part for making a happy retirement.
Exactly. And part of the planning is just really having an idea of what you're going. I mean, you say, what are you going to do? Because there's no point sort of running the numbers, running the finances. Say, oh, okay, here's X dollars. Okay, what are you going to do with that? You're better off to put it the other way around and think about, well, what do we want to do, and how are we going to do it? Because in some cases there might be some people that what looks great, they can do it when they're 60. Why don't you sort of stop and do it when you're 60? Because you never know that the knees might give by the time you're 65 or something. And it's really trying to maximize what you can get out of it.
And I think I saw another research paper a while ago when they actually talked about retirement for different age groups, people in their 30s, 40s, and I think they, more than our generation, have it better if they can financially afford to do that. But every 10 years, say, having a couple of months off, having a break, doing some travel, doing that, rather than wait your whole career, to that 65th birthday and then just doing it all in one go in case your health isn't. But for people who are in their 50s and 60s and around planning, I think it's important to keep coming back to this, that a lot of people do just, okay, next year I'm retiring. Oh, what am I going to do? Probably 5-10 years out is probably a good time to look at that. Do you feel?
Yeah, look, it's like almost anything. Best time to start is now or before now. 5 to 10 years gives you a bit of time where you can actually visualize what you're going to do. Hopefully, your kids are grown up and you can see what it's like beyond that stage, and you're thinking about those next steps. Some of the stuff we've looked at wasn't in this latest piece, but looking at sort of how much people worry, which is the flip side of happiness.
Right.
And the number one antidote was the plan. Actually, as long as you followed through, the worst thing to do was to put a plan in place and then not do it. But to actually sort of put the plan and then start working on it. And it doesn't have to be something massive. You don't need a whole lot of spreadsheets sort of calculating what you're going to do from week to week, but it's to have a real good idea about what it is. And to me, that gives you that base in terms around understanding who you are and what you're doing and how you're going to have your fun.
Okay, so um, and talking about fun, one of the points you did make before was your social aspect, and to me that's really quite important. What's your community? Because for a lot of people, and I find women, for the people who I've coached over the years, women are far better than this than men. They have their communities outside of work, whereas a lot of men seem to have their work community, and when they stop, they've lost their community, they've lost their social network in nearly. So I know part of your research was how important it was to have your social community as part of retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole lot of academic work that's looked into this state, and it ties into the other aspects. So is if you've got connections, then you feel like you belong to something, and it adds to your purpose. It's when you sort of sit, to some extent, people will question what their role is when they're isolated, negative side of things. When you can actually have those connections, it's much more fun. And for me, I'll put it into, and I'm sitting here looking at another, guy in his 50s. If I want to sit down and go have a drink at a pub, okay, yeah, I might get some enjoyment out of that. But if I go down there with a couple of mates and we're sitting there having a conversation, talking about this and, planning about what we might want to do next month, that's going to be much more interesting, much more fun than just sitting there having a drink, by myself. So it's that connection that actually enriches everything we do. And when you've got time in retirement, you want to keep those connections going and expand on them.
And expand on them. I think that's a really good point. There's the whole topic about blue zones and the areas of people who live longer. And one of the things I like is the Sardinians who, and you can just imagine, sort of, I think it's rude, but the Italians they call themselves Sardinians, but in that island Sardinia. But you see the older gentlemen and women, and they all, well, there's no transport, so they've got to walk everywhere. So there's the health side of it. But they all meet at that little cafe. And they have their espresso in the morning, and they're still there 3 hours later, just chatting away. And they've got a purpose. They've got somewhere to go every day. They're talking about solving the problems of the world. And I just think absolutely there's a real important factor there in longevity, but also enjoying that longevity as well.
That's right, and it's having that purpose, having those connections, being able to enjoy life. Because the more you enjoy life, I think sort of subconsciously your whole body's going to say, well, let's give you more life to enjoy. And I think there's a real lot of positive benefits that come off the back of that. No real science to that one, or none that I know of anyway, but I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, and one of the other points you made, actually, we should flip this because, as you said about the opposite to happiness, well, people do have concerns when it comes to retiring. You talked about isolation as being one of them. What was some of the other research you found, or the drivers or the top concerns to stop you having happiness in retirement?
Yeah, look, I think a couple of concerns. There's twofold. One is sort of the physical health. People worry about whether their knees will go out. But the other one is the concerns about money, and it's financing and will they have enough? And part of the happiness research is to focus on the positive side, but you still see what is it out there that's sort of holding back, and it's feeling financially secure. And this is where well, how do you actually overcome that? And what we find is if people know they're going to have income tomorrow or next year or in 10 years, they're much more relaxed, and sort of putting in that place sort of some guaranteed options there is something that I think 70% of them said, actually, that would really make me feel in a better place. So when you can put those together with the connections and the purpose, you really can give retirees or just older people a good base to sort of get on and enjoy things.
And Challenger has done this research piece, which is anything to help people, educate people about retirement and planning, and that it's not just about the money. But the first thing anyone who ever came and saw me was, will I have enough? That's always the first question. And so I think talking a bit about the good work Challenger do, and it's great that Challenger provided you to be able to speak on this show. I don't get anything out of this. This is just an important topic to my heart, and I just think it's important for people to know about it. But the one of the things that Challenger does well is it provides that guaranteed income, and that provides that comfort factor. So, and that was part of your research too, that I think that, and we will actually go over into why that's 70%. I think that's where we landed, and I should haven't spoken about that very much so far, but just a guaranteed income was one of those factors to help boost your happiness level.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because and I had it's another context. Someone said, "Oh, yeah, one of the issues is that finances are just so scary. People don't want to talk about it." But of course, when it's like that, that's what creates the fear. So what we want to do is if people are more aware of what the options are and that there's availability out there, they can go out and explore it and find the income or the needs for finance that suit them. And what we see, is the concept of having money that will always be there, certain amount, ideally adjusting to the cost of living and last as long as you do, is something that's quite appealing to a lot of people. We try and avoid putting product labels and everything on it. It comes up really strongly. So the key for us is to make sure that people are aware of that this is an option and they can find ways of getting it where they can. And what the happiness was showing is that 70% of people said, actually, yeah, I think I'd be happier if I knew that was there. Some of them might not take it up, but they'd be happier knowing it was available.
Yeah, I think for most of the people I've spoken to over the years, and we actually did a calculation. We worked out I've had over 30 years. I've had over 10,000 money and retirement conversations. But it's when they have that comfort, they're just looking for comfort. This is the great unknown. The retirement is the great unknown, and I think it's the best time of your life. But unless you know about it and prepare for it, and as you said, plan for it, it can be a real worry. Those keep you up at night moments. So I think knowing that the income that you were getting from your salary or however you were getting it for your family, that it's going to keep coming in through retirement, it just has to make you feel better.
Yeah, that's right. Well, no one, actually some might, but most people don't worry about whether their pay is going to be in their bank account this week or next month. They know it's coming through there and they plan around that and they put their budget together. So having something that's regular and stable through retirement is a big win. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. And it's finding the mix that comes in. I think one of the things that you see with this concern about retirement is, when you ask, how much do I need? Well, it's a bit long. How long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
Because how much someone needs depends on their own circumstances, what they're used to, what they want to spend. The other question I get, I always get that one there when people are thinking about retirement. And then when they're in retirement, it's like, well, how much can I spend? Yeah. It's like, okay, I got my pot of money now. What can I spend down? And they're sort of like, the answer is really whatever you want. But the question is how do you actually do that safely? And so this is where, if someone's listening along here, I'd say go off and have a chat to a financial advisor or someone here to help you out, because they can sit down and figure out the right plan that says, okay, well, this is what we can do that will help you spend what you want for as long as you want and then not run out when you need to, because that's the key. It's making sure that you can enjoy things now. And then when your knees are gone and everything out there, when you're not doing that travel, that you still got all the stuff you actually need instead of having to go sort of hassle the kids or sort of go and ask them for extra help on stuff. And I think that's sort of another aspect that people really want to avoid.
And I heard this great quote years ago, and it just stuck with me, that it's not where you invest your money, but it's not that you just don't outlive your money. That's the biggest concern. And I think it's really important that, as you said, you probably don't get a second chance to retire. You want to get this right the first time. So getting a plan, and even if it's just to have a coach or an advisor do the numbers and just say, based on what your pre-retirement salary was, 100% of that or 2/3 of that, you've got enough of that to spend that for the next 30, 40 years. And when people do need to look at 30 years, we are all living longer. So it's important that our money lasts, and our money, and I often talk about getting your money working harder for you in retirement as well as pre-retirement. So
yeah, that's right.
please.
Say, like, one of the things too, and this is where the guaranteed income sort of changes that discussion as well. Because if it's a guaranteed income stream, it will last as long as you do. So if you happen to live 40 years, it'll last 40 years. If it's only 20 years, it lasts 20 years. But what it means is it frees up that choice. You don't need to worry about the 30 years then and sort of having the rest of it. If you get enough for the bit on that base, you can then spend a bit more early on. And I think that's the key, because there's an easy way to make your money last 30 years or 40 years. Don't spend any. Right? Because if you don't spend it, it's going to last.
Yes.
If we come back to what makes people happy, it's meeting people, doing things, enjoying life. Well, that means, you're not actually getting that if you're not spending the money. So the key to happiness is being sort of comfortable to spend the money you've got. And I think that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's having just that comfort factor is just, I can see why that was scored at 70%, having that guaranteed income, because it's just such a comfort factor knowing that regardless of how long I live, it's going to be there. So yeah, no, totally agree. Was there research done around that we've seen, especially since COVID, cost of living, interest rates have all gone up. There's a lot of people who retire with debt. So how is that affecting retirement confidence?
Look, this wasn't in this research, but we've done stuff with national seniors before and looking at their members, and you see a big increase in the concerns about the cost of living. Most retirees don't have a big mortgage. If they've got one, they get rid of it fairly quickly.
Yep.
So they're not feeling the crunch of the interest rates, but they're all feeling that cost of living. And the reason for that is because their income doesn't normally adjust. If you're working, usually, and we've got in the last few years, usually when there's inflation, you get a wage increase. So if something happens, you catch up. But when you're retired, there's no automatic increase for the cost of living. So you've got to sort of find it out of there, or have an option that gives that to you. And I think sort of, again, that unknown, that uncertainty has sort of created a little bit more concern amongst the retirees. We've got, there are options out there. People on defined benefit pensions and those that have, CPI linked annuities, they're going fine. They've had big pay increases. The age pension does this for everybody, but only for those who get that age pension component. So it's just, it's great, but may not be enough for many people. Yeah,
no, and it is. I think the generation, anyone who are in their 50s and 60s now, the age pension very rarely covers their lifestyle or their work. If they want to have it comparable to what their work lifestyle was. Probably actually for a lot of people, they don't actually know how annuities work. Do you want to just give us a bit of a rundown of how it actually works, having this guaranteed income?
Yeah, well, it's actually quite simple from the point of view of someone who holds an annuity. If we're talking about there's two types. There's a lifetime, as a term. A term annuity is a bit like a term deposit, but usually for longer years. But generally, when people talk about annuities, they're talking about lifetime. And the idea with a lifetime annuity is you'll invest your money up front, and the life company will figure out how much you can get back that will last the rest of your life. And they put that in a pool with everybody, so that sort of the people who only live to sort of 75, and those who only live to 85, and those who live to 95 will all get sort of the same sort of income if they started at the same time. And no one knows in advance who that is. So in that sense, it's a fair setup. But the idea being is that for the retiree, they've got that certainty of that income is going to last as long as they like. And most of them, these days are inflation linked, so they're automatically linked to inflation, 1 year to the next. And the other thing, and this is what's it's about 12 years ago we did this, there's now the death benefit attached usually. So if you happen to be someone who doesn't last very long, I talk about the hit by the bus problem. Mm-hmm. You get by the annuity, step out and get hit by the bus. Well, actually the annuity doesn't win. Your estate does, because we give you your money back. And for some people it's up to about 10 years after buying the annuity, you'll get the full money back on top of the income that you've actually received over that time there. So our actuaries know there's not a lot of people that happens to, so it doesn't have a big cost to do that, but it provides a lot of peace of mind. And being able to have that peace of mind, I think, is the key thing for any retiree, and particularly around finances.
And I have to admit, I did not know that either. I think that's a great benefit that you've got on that. That, as you said, that the estate will get their money back, because definitely when annuities, I've been around doing this for 30 years, when annuities first came out, no, if you didn't last a year or two, sometimes you basically did lose everything. So that's great that problem, or that worry, has been fixed. So. But it's also, it's important, and you would also understand that annuities, it's not an all or nothing solution. It may be that you also still have your lump sum. So if you need to take out lump sums for travel or for one-off things, you could still have that. It's not as if you've got your retirement funds, 100% of it's got to go into an annuity.
No, look, that'd be very odd, because what people use the annuity for, this guaranteed income, is for the money that you need sort of every day going through life. So first up, it's not really that great for that sort of, you want to take that big trip in 3 years' time. You want a big lump of money for that. If you think you might need to have trips over the next 10 years, or you want to be able to do something fun, then you probably want something that's a little bit more growthy, like your typical sort of balance fund, sort of backing that sort of thing there. And there's always, people talk about the rainy day pot of money. I've seen some research on this where it's looking at even just age pensioners that don't have very much money left, and they've hung on to, there was a peak at 50,000 and at 100,000, where they were leaving, it looked like basically just leaving money in a term deposit, that in case something happened, they had that there just in case. And that's sort of, I think, very important, both from a planning point of view, but just people's mindset. They want to know that if something happens, that's there. So when you're looking at how much guaranteed income you need, it's probably only about 20% of the portfolio at most. Most of the money is there sort of still for that investment. The example I usually give is, I talk about the guarantee sort of acting as a bit like the brake. It's the safety of the car. Most of the time you're pushing your accelerator, you're going for growth, you're trying to do things. When you need it, you can put the brakes on and slow down, but you don't want to be pushing the brake too often. Even in sort of traffic, you can cop in Sydney at times. You don't need that brake too often. And if you get that balance right, then it works really well. You sit your foot on the brake and you try and hold everything there, it's a really bad outcome. You don't get anywhere. That's no fun. No. Same thing. You don't want to go flat out and sort of go for max fun and then not have that brake, because then you never know what's going to happen.
No, I like that analogy. But one of the things you actually said there at the very beginning is about the planning, and we keep going back to the planning, how to plan a few years out, at least 5-10 years out, to think about this next stage of your life. And I actually call it unleashing your third act. I think it's just a great period of life, and I'm in that now. And while I still like enjoying work, I definitely not working as hard, and just thinking this is the best time of my life. One of the things that really, as I say, you don't get a second chance to retire. You need to get this right. And just as I said, I hearing about that death benefit that was attached to, I did not know that. And I think it's just so important for anyone who retires. You don't know what you don't know, and getting really good advice to know what's out there, to know what your options are, and to also plan on where you have enough, or how it should be, how you should organize your retirement funds. It's just so important.
Absolutely. And getting the information, there's part of the problem too is the deluge and seeing what's there, but having a good look at understanding what the options are, talking to someone who knows what it is, whether it be in a super fund or your own advisor. But it's just going to be a big benefit.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's been brilliant. Thank you. There's been so much information there. I absolutely we'll have a link to the actual retirement happiness index, the research you've done, challenges done. So thank you very much, because I think anything education on retirement is so important. So I encourage everyone to go to Challenge's website. It's just look up retirement happiness, and you can just go straight to the link. But yeah, check out Challenge's other products while you're there. But one of the things I'd like to just end on, and one thing I always ask my guest is, what's probably the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, look, I've actually had a bit of think about this one, Mark, because you ask it all the time, and so I was preempted. And I actually reflected back. I'm going to give you something that came out of my high school math teacher. Okay. Very odd thing. And now I didn't know until later he was actually a reformed alcoholic. but he always started the class with the Serenity Prayer. And so that's stuck with me in a sense. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's quite
No, I
simply, to ask for the serenity, to accept the things you cannot change, courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And to me, in all aspects, whether it's sort of, personal life or work, or even thinking about planning, if you're thinking about what you're doing in retirement, there's some things you can cope with, and it may be you can't do much about your physical health where it is there. Maybe you can do a little bit more. Thinking about those changes you can do. And it's that wisdom to know the difference in terms of, well, what can you do and what do you just have to deal with? And then once you get that working, I think you find the real sweet spot.
Oh, brilliant. I really, really like that. I know I mustn't now, once you said it, that's a great piece of advice. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. You've given us a lot of information and just and made hopefully people's retirement just that little bit better. And if you're looking forward to your retirement, to have that a little bit happier. So appreciate your time today.
Well, lovely to be here, Mark. And hopefully I'm helpful and people find it useful.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to know more about Aaron Minney and the Retirement Happiness Index, visit www.challenger.com.au. Or feel free to email me on admin@themoneysandwich.com or visit our website, themoneysandwich.com, if you'd have any questions or would like to learn more. Enjoyed this episode and want to hear more of A Bite from the Money Sandwich? Make sure you subscribe on your platform of choice so you can automatically receive each episode as soon as it's released. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalized to your own situation. And past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching, and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.